This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Evan Grant and Calvin Watkins, here to talk about those tying Cowboys. They love you.
Say lying or tying?
Well, either, whatever fits. Doesn't matter. No, I tell you, that was one crazy game, I would say this for the Cowboys. I don't think they're very good, despite what their offense is, but they're entertaining. They have played in the two of the most entertaining games of the season, right? Against the Giants, then of course against the Packers. I mean, they kept you on the edge of your seat right up until the very end.
Oh yeah, they did. Jerry Jones is the best promoter in sports. Give the people what they want. They want to be entertained, and they were entertained. In fact, I could go back to the Philly game when they played the Eagles. That was an entertaining first half, and then we had a lightning delay, and that game got kind of messed up a little bit. And even the Bears game was entertaining because everyone loves to see the Cowboys lose, and the Bears were kicking the tail out of them. So Cowboys are definitely high ratings, and that's what people love.
Yeah, they're all over the map. When I was watching that game, Calvin, in the first half, I'm thinking, they're just being dominated here, but it's still just 13-2. And that was the thing. It wasn't like that the Packers got away from them. And I thought, for me, on offense, the problem in the Bears game was that they deserted the run, and in a way they kind of had to, because of the way that the Bears were piling up points, but they simply have to run the ball. And in that game, in the tie against the Packers, Javonte Williams got 20 carries, which is a lot for the Cowboys for one guy these days. In my mind, still not enough for him. I like to see him get the ball between 20 and 25 times a game. Wow. Because of what a powerful runner he is. I just believe that he kind of wears down opposing defenses a little bit late in games. But, it's hard to question the way that Brian Schottenheimer called that game. That was a tremendous job offensively. Dak Prescott did a great job. George Pickens came up big in that game. You really couldn't question much they did offensively. Defensively, of course, that's another matter. But before we get to that, I want to ask you really quick if you just update us on the injury situation with everybody.
Yeah, the biggest injuries they have going into the Jets game, who they play Saturday up in East Rutherford, is Malik Hooker, the starting safety. He's probably not going to play, and Brian Schottenheimer said it might be a couple of weeks. Hooker told me he's got some ligament damage in one of his toes. When I saw him in the locker room on Monday, I said, "Oh, this must be good because I don't see you in a boot." And he's like, "No, I got some problems." So they're going to lose their starting safety in that Jets game. And as I said, a couple of weeks. There is some good news. Tyler Booker is out of a protective boot. He has a high ankle sprain. We won't see him probably for another 2 weeks. CeeDee Lamb, I believe, is still in the protective boot, and he's not going to play for another 2 weeks. But that is good news that they are progressing. Now, the Cowboys could put Booker or CeeDee Lamb on injured reserve, but they're not going to do that as of now. And as soon as they do that, they're going to miss him for at least 4 games. But by not putting him on injury reserve, that's a good sign to me that says they might be back sooner rather than later.
All right. Now, Evan, I want you to tell Calvin what we talked about with Joe Hoyt last week when we discussed just how many games this Cowboys team was going to win. And when their next win was going to be. And we were all like, I believe we were all in like the 4s and 5s. And then the Cowboys go out and tie what is supposed to be maybe the best team in the NFC. So Evan, first of all, let me ask you, are you going to revise your win total for the Cowboys after they got this glorious tie?
No, I'm not. I think they win one of the next 2 games, right? They've got the Jets, and who's after the Jets?
Carolina.
Yeah, they'll go 1-1 in those games. I feel like maybe they could go 2-0. Maybe I'll revise up to 6. But here's the bottom line, right? They played 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
they need to score 40 points or more to win a game. That's the bottom line. Green Bay
40 didn't do it this time. So
Green Bay has averaged 21 points in its other 3 games. It scored how many points against the Cowboys? 40, and that was with probably some bad, let's say, clock and play management calls from Matt LaFleur late.
He was terrible. I've never seen someone played for a tie and you're a title contending team. That was almost a fireable offense the way he managed that game. It was terrible.
He had that game won in the play calling in that situation. They're so lucky they were able to get the field goal off. The other part that I would
what bugs me
mention,
about Matt LaFleur? It's the grooming issue. He's a little too cleaned up for me. He's got his waxed eyebrows and a special little goatee cut and everything. It's like man, he's like a Ken doll. It's just
Kevin,
it's a little too much for me.
a famous man once told me, "Be curious, not judgmental." Okay?
Oh, you're not being judgmental when you say that to me?
Correct. I'm just being factual at that point.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead.
And then the other thing for me, I just went back and I looked at this morning, right? The Giants scored 37 on the road against the Cowboys. They've scored 12 points a game in their other three
Well,
games.
they changed quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So
I just don't see how this defense is going to allow this team to win. And the one other thing, I don't want to make excuses. I know Micah was not a game in which Micah Parsons dominated. I do think that probably as late as this trade happened, there's still some adjustments for him that he's going through. I do think the Cowboys schemed up pretty well to kind of negate him, but I just don't see this team having the ability to score 40 points 8 or 9 times this year to put together a winning season.
And Calvin, this is what you wrote about for today's Dallas Morning News, in which you said basically Dak is playing, at his best levels since it's only 2 years ago when he was a runner-up to the MVP. But he's playing at a great level, and that wasn't good enough for them to win in the playoffs. I think your point now is that it's not even. It's a really great question where they could even get to the playoffs. Dak playing at this level. I mean, he is leading the NFL in almost all categories, and yet they're 1-2-1.
Yeah, the defense is holding him back now because I don't know if they could beat anybody. Like, they haven't beaten the Jets in New York since 2003, right? Now, they have beaten the Jets. They had like a 4-game losing streak to the Jets until, I think, 21 when they finally beat them. But I think they'll lose to the Jets and beat Carolina. And then they got Washington, Denver, and Arizona as the next 3 before the bye. And I had 7 wins for this team at the start of the season with Micah Parsons. I had him winning 7 games with Micah Parsons on the roster.
Right.
Now that Micah Parsons is cashing checks in Wisconsin, and they've lost to the Bears, right? A game that we all thought they were going to win. They tied the Packers, so you could say, okay, that was a loss, but they got a tie. And they have all these problems on defense. The offensive line is going to be down 2 starters. I forgot to say, Tyler Guyton, the star left tackle, got a concussion, but Brian Schottenheimer thinks he's trending in the right direction. But, when you have brain injuries, you never know. So they might not even have the left tackle for the Jets game. So that's 3 offensive starters that might be gone. But anyway, 5 wins might be realistic. And now we're talking about a top 5 draft pick. So,
you're always seeing the bright side, Calvin. That is what I love about you.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of this. We know the NFL is a week-to-week league, right? That there weird things happen every week and stuff you can't really explain. I will say that this team over the years, it wasn't always so, but the Cowboys have become a good home team. The way they play at home, they do defend Jerry World very well. I don't want to say defend. I say they play good offense in Jerry World. Let's say that, because then you go up to Chicago and they lose. I mean, I would have thought, if you watch the game Sunday, you would think, well, that they should be able to beat the Jets. If they did this to the Packers, they should be able to beat the Jets. Well, they're not so good on the road. and they have their problems there. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. Our buddy Tim Cowlishaw was practically gushing over the Cowboys in this game. I've never seen a guy so happy for a tie in my whole life as he was after that game, and it's continued to be. And talking about what a great job Brian Schottenheimer is doing calling plays, and he is. I guess, like I said, I wasn't crazy about the play call in the Chicago game, but I think circumstances somewhat dictated that. But this is just a horrific defense. They not only are they bad at getting to the quarterback, but now in this game also you had stupid plays like Leah foul and the personal foul hitting a guy. It hit the ball. It bounced away from the guy. The ball was practically out of bounds before he hits the receiver on that play. That's really, really bad. You've got Sam Williams with the face mask called, and then arguing with the refs about it afterwards. It's like, man, I would just go crawl in a hole, pal. Don't be arguing with the refs after that. What are you going to say? His face mask got in the way of my hand? I mean,
Sam was just talking. How you gotta milk the refs. You gotta get them to see your side of the story. That's Sam. Sam is good. Sam is good with law enforcement. That's all I'll say.
Exactly. So Calvin, so what did you see any sign whatsoever that on defense that this maybe was getting a little bit better? Are they, do you think that there's any hope at all that this defense could just be average at some point?
No, not really. It was funny, but in that Packer game, it was one of the first plays of the game. They throw a deep ball, and the two receivers in the same area beating the secondary. And
right.
And I was
not
like,
just one guy beating, but two. Yeah.
Two guys. It was like one guy said, "You catch it. No, you catch it. No, I'll catch it." And
so clearly one of them is in the wrong place. They've screwed up. And yet the Cowboys still can't take advantage of the fact that they screwed up.
Yeah. I've never seen that before. So I don't think they'll get better because there's nothing they can do with the personnel. You can't trade 11 guys, right? And this also speaks to why Micah Parsons is so great because he changes things on the field. And they got Jadeveon Clowney, and he's okay, right? And he'll help. The scheme needs to change in some ways. They're playing so much zone. I was talking to Deron Bland on Monday, and I said, did you guys play a lot of zone in training camp or man-to-man? Because I didn't see a lot of coverage busts in training camp, or am I not knowing what I'm looking at, right? And he goes, no, we played some zone in camp. And I said, but I don't remember guys just running past you, catching touchdown passes. You guys are right there. He goes, yeah, that's what it is, So either these guys are just not very good anymore. I don't know what I'm watching. You don't know what you're watching. The defense is bad. It's not going to get better.
Let me ask you this. What about when DeMarvion Overshown comes back? Is that going to help?
That will help a little bit, yes. The linebackers are terrible. When you're playing a lot of zone defense, which is what the Cowboys play, you need your linebackers to cover up some of these spots in the zone. And they don't have linebackers athletic enough or basically fast enough to get to receivers. There was a 4th and 2 in that game, and Trayvon Diggs, who gets a lot of criticism around here, he noticed Matthew Golden. He's yelling at the safety and the linebackers. Matthew Golden's going to run right here. So let's get this area. He's yelling at these guys, right? Snap the ball. Matthew Golden goes to the spot where Diggs is at. First down catch. So it's like they're not seeing it well. They're not being taught well. This is a disaster. So
and on that point about
sir.
the linebacker, I know I've been complaining about the linebackers all year long, is that when they signed these guys, if you looked up what Pro Football Focus said about Kenneth Murray and about Jack Sanford, it was that they're terrible in pass coverage.
They still
terrible.
are.
And they still are. And so that's the thing. You're asking these guys to carry the receivers back to the secondary, and they can't do it.
Well, the one time they did do it, with the game on the line, Jack Sanborn is carrying the receiver to the end zone. One problem: if he turns around, it's an interception. The Cowboys win the game. Instead, he's got his head. He's looking in the stands. The ball hits him in the back. Yeah. And I'm talking to him about this yesterday, and I go, "Hey, what happened on that play?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm running with the guy. I thought I was supposed to turn around. I felt something hit me in the back, and I turned around. I was like, oh my gosh, and I said, oh, okay. Weren't you supposed to have your head around, like looking? I'm not a football guy. I'm not an X's and O's guy, but I would think, you're running with a receiver. You want to turn your head to see where the ball is, right? But there's a disconnect from the coaching end of it to the talent to the scheme. It's just a lot of holes there that it's hard to. They have too many holes to fix.
It's a bad scheme. It's a bad scheme fit, is what it is in my mind.
Yeah.
You've been playing
man-to-man corners. Yeah.
Yes, you've been playing one way all these years with these guys, and now you're changing. And of course, Calvin, as we know, this is the problem with the Cowboys. They don't have an identity. Every time they change coaches, every time they change coordinators, they change to something else. And so, instead of, that's been the problem all along when they have a draft. They draft to try to fit what this coach wants to do. Instead of having identity, this is who we are. This is what we play. If we change coaches, we're going to get a coach who does the same thing that we do, so we can keep this and have continuity. Instead, now you're trying to make guys fit something that they can't do, or you go out and bring in guys like Murray and Sanford who can't do that. Who can't do what you're asking them to do. They have not done it. They're veteran linebackers who've never shown that they were capable of doing that. That's why Kenneth Murray, although he racks up a lot of tackles, that's why he didn't last long. So he's where he was drafted. So this is the problem for me, that the Cowboys do these kind of things. But of course, it is also, as we know, very much what Jerry Jones is. He's an optimist, an eternal optimist, always thinks things are going to work out somehow. We'll just make it work, even if there's no logic behind it. So I guess a question we should ask now. Well, let's try to figure out something. I don't want to say nice to say, but let's talk about something that has worked out well, right? George Pickens was terrific in that game. Although I will say, sometimes it wasn't a question to me of how good George Pickens was. It was about how bad the Packers' coverage was. I mean, it was like they didn't even know who George Pickens was. I mean, there are several times when of course, they had a backup cornerback trying to cover him, which was silly. Why didn't they get somebody with more experience on that side to give him some help? But he was laying 10 yards off of him, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to unless you're an elite corner, you need to give yourself some space with George Pickens, because he's a very talented receiver. There were issues why he's no longer in Pittsburgh, right? And the biggest issue this team had was when they lose a primary offensive player like a CeeDee Lamb, they had nobody else to help. Now you don't have CeeDee Lamb. Now you have someone to help. And that's George Pickens, who's an elite receiver. And he had a wonderful game Sunday. And I agree with Tim. Brian Schottenheimer called a great game, but Dak Prescott also played a great game, right? He made all the necessary throws in that game. Pickens is just, yes, they need CeeDee Lamb, right? But without him, I'm okay with George Pickens. He got 134 yards receiving, 8 catches, 2 touches, fantastic performance. And he's going to carry this offense with Dak, along with Javonte Williams. The running game Javonte Williams is like, he's looking like Tony Dorsett out there. He's playing the contact. When there's no holes, he still finds a way to get maybe 3 yards. He's catching balls in the backfield. They lost Miles Sanders in that game, and they still kept Williams out there. And he has been great. And that has been a positive thing, is Pickens, Dak, and Javonte Williams, and what they've been able to do with the offensive line. And that's been a positive thing. If the defense can get some issues resolved, it might be a playoff team here. But We don't have a playoff team, so it's what it is.
Okay, well, that was so much for our attempt at being positive. I get,
Sorry.
and I will say
Oh,
this too.
Cowboys. Sorry.
The whole George Pickens thing. I don't want to pick on Tim, but he was talking about how great that was too. So you gave up a third and a fifth for him, right?
Yeah.
And got back a sixth. And so after this season, if he keeps playing like this, he's going to get a big contract, right? So
Sure.
do the Cowboys take all the money that they were going to pay, Micah Parsons, and all of a sudden give most of that to George Pickens, or do they lose him? And if they lose him, and it was on a 7-win team, it cost you a third and a fifth for a guy who didn't make any difference or who made a difference, but it didn't make enough difference to get you into the playoffs. That's a bad move, isn't it?
It is. The problem is when the Cowboys pay players, they get hurt. So that's the problem. So they pay Dak Prescott, he gets hurt. They pay CeeDee Lamb, he got hurt last year. They paid Deron Bland. He's only played 2 games this year because he's got a sprained foot. So I'm afraid to pay George Pickens, right? I just am. If you don't make the playoffs with George Pickens, right, and you got 2 first-round picks, wide receivers are falling out the sky. Get you another one, in the first round, and keep it moving. And save that money for something else, like a pass rusher, or another corner. Well, because Diggs is going to get cut when the season's over, right? So I understand.
Well, you buried the lead on us. You think that Trayvon Diggs is going to get cut after this season's over?
Yeah, I think they would have cut him this summer if he hadn't gotten hurt.
I think the lead, quite frankly, is that we're 4 games into the season and we're talking about the draft.
Well, that's what you got to look forward to here.
I'll
tell you what.
I'm glad I'm not doing the draft coverage anymore. I'm so happy. That's right.
The Cowboys are entertaining. You can't deny that. They may be bad, but they're entertaining. So that's really as a consumer, that's all you should really care about, unless you like your team to go to the playoffs. That's always fun. All right, Calvin, we appreciate you taking the time, man. Thanks for coming on board with us to talk about the Cowboys. We'll see what they do with the Jets. I'm going to be more optimistic than you guys. I'm going to say they win these next 2 games. I'm saying they beat the Jets and the Panthers. That doesn't sound like a lot, but for this team, it probably is. So I might be sticking my neck out a little bit. But that's
I was hoping you'd make one of these road trips, but you just don't care about us anymore.
Yeah, I'd love to make a road trip, but they won't let me anymore. They said no, you can't go. You can't go. I'd love to go to New York. That'd be great. I'd love for Calvin Watkins to take me back to the neighborhood and show me around, but I guess I can't do that.
Maybe, well, you know what? They play the Giants in January. Maybe come to New York in the snow and the cold in January. We could do that.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing.
Where did you grow up, Calvin?
I grew up on 98th and Lexington, right outside Spanish Harlem in Manhattan.
Okay.
Beautiful. All right, Calvin. We'll see you next time, pal.
See you guys.
Well, not much going on with the Rangers these days, right, Evan? They just let the best manager in their history and one of the greatest in the history of the game walk. So Bruce Bochy is out the door. I'm assuming that Skip Schumaker is on the other side of that door right now, getting ready to walk in, but the Rangers are not ready to make that announcement yet. But I wouldn't expect anybody else to even be in the equation, is there?
I think the candidate list is one. It's Skip, and if it ends up not being Skip, I don't know who it would be. There would be an issue. And look, Skip Schumaker is going to be this week. If the Rangers don't get him signed very quickly as the manager, he's going to be very much in demand. San Francisco fired Bob Melvin on Monday. Minnesota fired Rocco Baldelli on Monday. There could be other jobs that come open. And Skip is going to be a hot commodity. So it would not be smart for the Rangers to dawdle on this because I think Skip will have some leverage. So I think he's the clear favorite. I don't know that there's anybody else on that list at this point in time. And I guess the one thing that I would say is at least Skip knows what he's going to be getting himself into.
All right, I got two questions for you. One of them I was going to ask Chris Young on the Zoom call last night, but I couldn't get my stupid laptop to work properly, so I was just sitting there as an innocent bystander. One, had the Rangers made the playoffs, of course this wouldn't have happened now because the playoffs would be going on, would Bruce Bochy be returning as a manager next year?
That's a great question, Kevin. And listen, I I would like to think that would be the case. And if he didn't return as manager, I think it would then it'd be hard to sell the idea of a how was it turned, quote unquote, mutual agreement that he's not coming back. But also, Kevin, I feel like this. It's a sad day when Bruce Bochy is not managing in Major League Baseball, let alone the Rangers. I do think as the Rangers' problems go, the managerial situation is not the biggest of issues. I think that they do have a potential star in Skip Schumaker. Um, I don't think that the Rangers were going to go out on that limb too strong on Monday because I think they wanted to make it mostly about a tribute to Boch. But they've got other issues that they've got to solve, and it's not going to be uh, a cut and paste job for Skip. There's a lot of work that's going to be done here, and this roster may have some upheaval. I think on two or three occasions on Monday night, Chris Young basically acknowledged again that the payroll is going to drop somewhat. Um, so uh, there's going to be a transition here.
All right, so my second question was, if Skip Schumaker were not already employed by the Rangers, would Bruce Bochy be coming back?
Again, questions I don't have the answer to. I wish I did. I really didn't have a feel on which way the Bochy thing was going to go up until Monday night when I got a call that this was going to happen. So I didn't see a reason to part ways with Bochy to as some kind of dereliction of his job or fact that he didn't do a good job. This team's poor performance falls squarely on this roster. It was a veteran group mostly. All the hitters regressed. The pitching staff was great. I don't think the blame falls on the manager here. So if we're saying that they're making a change because the team didn't meet its goals, there better be some other changes too, because this roster simply didn't get the job done.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody last week who I really respect and has deep background with the team in baseball, and he made the point that I think is the one everyone has to make. If you're going to blame Bruce Bochy for what happened with the offense this year, then you got to give him credit for how well the pitching did. I mean, that's how you can't separate one from the other. Those are both they're equal sides of the billing here, right? It's a 50-50 thing, pitching and then your lineup. And yet no one wanted to do that. All you ever heard about was complaints about how bad the offense was, and even from fans, and you hear that blowback all the time. It's, oh, this team, this was you would see stuff about, well, this team went to the World Series, and in 23 was essentially the same lineup, and yes, it did. And I think that shows what a magic job that Bruce Bochy did in his first year to win a World Series with that team and get career years out of Jonah Heim and Adolis Garcia, and to some extent people even like Josh Young and there's probably more people than that. Evan Carter has never been the same since then either. So I think that first of all, we should give Bruce Bochy his due for what he did for this organization, winning that World Series. I know that when Chris Young made that hire, I guess there was a question about how long do you want this guy to go, right? And they gave him the 3-year deal. And that's not very long for a manager, but he was, I'd like to say he's older, but he's just like a year older than me. So I guess that puts us in the same boat. I don't know if I could get a 3-year contract with the Morning News right now.
Well, Kevin, we need to have a talk with you after this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So, but my point is that
We need to reach a mutual agreement, Kevin.
yeah, a mutual agreement. I love it when they say that it's a mutual agreement. It's always a mutual agreement. You get fired. You fire me and I agree to walk out the door. So that's a mutual part of it. So, but I'm not sure, and I've had these conversations with Christian, but I'm not sure that if he thought all along this is a 3-year deal. I want to bring him in, see what happens, see how it goes, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Obviously,
I just think it worked. I just think it worked in reverse of how the
yes, I know,
Rangers had
and you
thought
wrote
this would
that.
go.
Yes, it's but let me say one more thing real quickly is that so I'm not sure about that, and I'm not sure that when he hired Skip Schumaker last November, that just looked like this is it. He's got because how long is Schumaker gonna want to sit around waiting on this job, right?
Correct.
And it just felt like that Chris really ran out of patience quickly on this thing. That guy won you a World Series, the next year was not good, and then boom, I'm hiring the replacement right now. If something happens right, if it goes wrong, I got the guy right here to go. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I do think that at all points in time in the Bochy era, the Rangers had a successor in place. They didn't know if, as you said, if this would go beyond 3 years. Will Venable would have been the successor if he had remained on staff and not taken the Chicago job. Skip is clearly the successor, and I give the Rangers credit. You've got an older manager going into his last year. It's always good to have an insurance policy. I don't think Skip was ever an albatross or anything. I don't think Bochy's ever affected by anything like that. The one thing that I will say is this: there, as an older manager, I think Bochy treats players as adults and expects them to show up and get the job done and know what they need to do. As this roster has trended a little bit more young in the last year, those players, for lack of a better term, need more babysitting and more hand-holding and more scolding. And this is not to say it's a weakness for Bruce Bochy, but it's not his strength. His strength is managing people as adults. And so maybe you can make the case that the roster, the way it will be set up next year, is not as suited for Bochy as it would be for somebody who's willing to tell players 1,000 times, no, you're going to bunt here, or you're going to move on the base pass, or you're going to do this, or you're going to sit down. And so I do think, you look at what Skip did in his first year with Miami with a very young team, went to the postseason. The Marlins then changed management above him, and he was basically turned into a lame duck. And Peter Benedict's wanted his guy in the manager seat. So the Rangers were opportunistic there. I don't think this club is going to be. I don't think there was a situation. I just go back to what I was saying. I don't think there's going to be a situation where this club is in a bad position in the managerial seat, but they've got a lot of problems on the field that they got to solve, and it doesn't matter who's in the managerial seat on that front.
Well, that's my point about all that. Bruce Bochy has managed all kinds of teams. The teams that won World Series against the Rangers when he was managing the Giants, that was not a great team. They had some really good pitching. They had a couple of good players, and there was a very average team otherwise, as we've said many times on this podcast, and I've written. Edgar Renteria, the shortstop, the MVP of the World Series, they released him after the World Series was over. And I asked Bochy about that a couple of weeks ago about Renteria, and he said, he was a money player. See, and I thought that was very insightful about what Bruce was looking for in players. He played the hot hand. He went with guys like that. He read people really well. None of those things he didn't talk about those kind of things. He didn't give you any tips about the way he thought about managing that kind of stuff. He was a very good poker player. He kept all that to himself and didn't tip those kind of things. And for me to say that, well, you got to do this with these guys, you got to do with that, then those guys are losing players. If you've got to be kicking guys in the butt all the time, and if you've got to be doing that kind of stuff, then they're probably not winning players. And that's not on the manager. That's on the GM and the president, the guys who are putting these rosters together. Now we can talk about next year and going into it and what's going to happen there. And I would expect probably there'll be some changes. But I did not see anything at the end of this year, even though the Little Rascals, that was all a fun little, subtext to the season and how well they play. Let's look at their numbers. Those numbers are not something that's sustainable over the course of a year. These guys are hitting, they're not really producing any more than the guys who were that they were replacing who were injured. They're not going to replace those people next year. I mean, unless they make some moves and bring in some outside people, I still got serious questions about Alejandro Osuna taking Adolis Garcia's place in right field. Marcus Semien has been playing at a very poor level, and Marcus Semien, who said last week that he had questions about, that he questioned about how the roster is put together and that he wants to play on a winner, all the things that Marcus said. And then after the last two seasons that he's put up, he should have just apologized and said, I'm sorry that I didn't do my part to help us win, because he didn't. And he's being paid handsomely to do that. So I don't see where the changes are going to be made in the lineup. I noticed that Chris Young said last night something about developmental aspect of this team and what the roster is going to be. Who exactly is coming up?
Well, I mean, the developmental aspect, I think, will still involve the younger players. And there are a number of younger players. They should have Evan Carter back next year for however long he stays healthy. They will have Wyatt Langford, who has, been a really solid player his first 2 years. I think they expect next year for Wyatt to take a leap into stardom. Josh Young is 28, but he's still essentially an inexperienced player. And then you get into the guys like Osuna, who I do think will be given an opportunity to win right field. And he's not going to hit 30 home runs. I don't think he's going to hit 30 home runs, but I do think that what I saw over the last 5 weeks of the season when he got regular playing time after being sent down to the minors were professional at bats that were team centric at bats. Like, he had a feel for what the game needed at that point in time. I do think that Cody Freeman should be on this team probably as a bench player. But he, for me, has a role on a championship club. You will have Jack Leiter in his second year in the rotation. You'll have probably Jacob Latz. You will have the possibility of Kumar Rocker. So there will be some younger players. And look, we don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. I do think that the Semien comments certainly caused some ripples in the organization. And I think it left a lot of people confused because, hey, Marcus has been one of the 15 worst offensive players in baseball the last 2 years. Period. The only thing he could say is at least he wasn't the worst offensive player on the Rangers, because Adolis Garcia was worse and Jonah Heim was worse, even though Jonah didn't quite qualify in terms of playing time. So, to your point, yeah, Marcus should have just apologized for the season and said, as much as anything, the reason we were in this hole was because of me, and he didn't. And so I do think the Rangers will look at all potential ways that they can maximize their resources, maximize whatever money they have to spend. And if that means breaking up Semien and Seager, hey, listen, 2 years ago is a lifetime in baseball. This has not been a very good team since 2023. And quite frankly, it's basically been a 500 team since the first 60 games of 2023. So this is it's another inflection point for the Rangers.
Well, no question about that. And I want to say this too, because we've all conceded that, okay, it's time for Adolis to go, right? And yet I'm going to say, because his offensive production hasn't been great, but over the last 4 years, he's driven in 101, 107, 85, and 75 runs. I mean, who's driving in that many runs for this team? For all of his problems, he drove in a lot of runs. I don't know. They're going to have to figure out what to do here because you just talk about breaking up the Seager Simeon thing. To me, it's you can't trade Corey Seager because who else scares you in that lineup? Nobody. Not even Wyatt Langford. Wyatt Langford's a good player, but he's not a scary player. He's not a scary offensive player like Corey Seager is. So he's there. Marcus Simeon, I don't know why anybody would take that contract. You'd have to pay more than half of the contract.
Well more than half of the contract. But at this point in time, with the 3 years he's got left at $25 million a year, any dollar that you get back is a dollar saved.
True. But then that's the point here is that if I thought that there was somebody like, no question, this is the guy that needs to take his place, I can't point any place on the diamond and say that. There's no question this is the guy who takes someone's place. There's Osuna will probably be the guy to take Adolfo's place, but it's not. I think, he showed some signs of doing some things out there, but I'm just not convinced. And I'm not convinced, Cody Freeman is not an everyday second baseman.
No.
I'm not even sure Josh Smith is an everyday second baseman.
Josh Smith is not an everyday player on a championship team. The second half of the year, the last 2 years has shown that. He wears down. End of story. I think he's got a role on a championship team. I think the days of flirting with the idea that he's an everyday player are over with. To your point, Kevin, there is work that has to be done. They will be able to marshal some dollars. Look, John Gray at $13 million is off the roster. Adolis at $9.5 million will be off the roster. Jonah Heim at $5 million will be off the roster. Not to mention Tyler Malley at, I think Tyler was 16 this year. So there's going to be some money. Chris Martin at $5 million, even with a lower payroll, unless Ray decides to absolutely slash it, which would be incredibly stupid because right now you've got Simeon and Seager at $60 million between the two of them, and Jacob deGrom and Nathan Eovaldi at nearly $60 million between the two of them. So you've got $120 million invested in 4 players. The Rangers have to go out and get a couple of pieces on the offensive side that have presence in the clubhouse and provide presence in the lineup. And the easiest place to do that would be at catcher. The obvious place to do that would be at catcher. It's going to be hard to find a really strong offensive catcher. And certainly, I'm not saying that Alejandro Osuna should be gift wrapped right field, but that is also a spot that's open, and it's a spot where the Rangers may have somebody. Listen, if this team decides that they feel like somebody like Alex Bregman would be a difference maker, I don't think there's any question that they would consider moving Josh Young. If they think they could get Pete Alonso, I don't think this team would blink twice about moving on from Jake Berger. So there are potential needle movers out there, but like I say, it's going to take some work on figuring out exactly what you've got in terms of resources and how you marshal those resources.
Yeah, I don't see them making moves like that. Alex Bregman's going to command a huge contract, just like, not just like, but Kyle Tucker's going to command a huge contract. Kyle Schwarber is going to get a big deal too. To me, those are the kind of, if you were talking about adding somebody, to me, that's the kind of name that you would have to bring in to make a difference.
All agreed. I mean, at the top of my list would be Kyle Schwarber. The question with Schwarber would be, now you've got to find a taker for Jock Peterson, which is going to be difficult coming off of the year that Jock just had. I certainly like what Alex Bregman potentially brings. I still think that Josh Young has a different level that he can get to, though time is starting to evaporate from that. I think JT Realmuto is not going to be a huge offensive needle mover, but he's got offensive skills, and I think he's a guy who could be available to really shore up the catching situation. But to your point, I mean, they're going to have to face some difficult questions.
Yeah, they are.
And listen, before we leave that, I just want to say this. The Rangers were right at $241 million this year. We won't, in terms of payroll, won't get final figures on that. I've seen some that suggested they were at $238.9 million, but I've talked to some people inside the organization that still feel like they're going to come out about $400,000 above the CBT threshold at 241. And the bottom line is this: this is a big market team. The Rangers held off of the MLB TV package so that they could create their own TV network and make more money. There is no reason that this team should significantly cut payroll. Period.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. To me, it just makes you look minor league. I think it looked bad enough blaming, basically making Bruce Bochy the scapegoat for everything that happened. You can couch it any way you want to, but when the manager leaves 2 years after winning the World Series, you're basically saying it's his fault.
This cycle has to stop. I'm not saying that the Rangers need to be a $340 million payroll, but going back to the Tom Hicks era of signing Alex and signing a bunch of guys early and then scaling back and then deciding, okay, after Ray came in here, they were going to bump up payroll and then scaling back again. This team needs to be a top 8 MLB payroll year after year. Period.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, that's going to do it for the Rangers segment of our podcast. So we'll know more to tell you about next week after we have the. Hopefully, we'll have some meetings here with Chris Young and.
Well, I've got some meetings scheduled with people. I'm going to set some people straight.
Wow, that's so great to know that you're on it, Evan. Thanks so much for that. We need to talk a little bit about college football, Evan.
Not really. I don't want to talk about college football this week.
We're talking about college football. Be quiet. We're going to talk about. For one thing, we've got a guy leaving Arkansas. Sam Pittman fired at Arkansas after getting hammered by Notre Dame 56-13. The Sam Pittman regime at Arkansas will not go down well. Your old buddy Bobby Petrino is taken over and has already canned 3 defensive coaches. Bobby's very excited about this opportunity to return Arkansas. They're going to give him the first shot at seeing if he can keep the job. I'm not thinking that's going to go well.
I personally want to take this moment to congratulate Brian Kelly on becoming my second least favorite coach in the SEC. Bobby Petrino, who epitomizes everything that is wrong with coaching, has ascended once again back to the top spot. I will say this. My son, stepson, however you want to label it, Nick and I were texting during Saturday, and I had given him the traditional woo pig since he's an Arkansas grad. And about, I don't know, 15 minutes later, he texted back, watching Sam Pittman's funeral. And then he texted me an emoji of a headstone.
Oh, that's so ugly. Come on.
But it's true. I mean, everybody that I know that was an Arkansas fan thought this is the week that is going to be the end of the Sam Pittman era. And listen, I saw what Sam did at Georgia. I like Sam Pittman, but he didn't do a great job at Arkansas. And it's not an easy job right now.
They should not have brought him back this year. Anytime, I don't know why ADs do this. A coach is on his way out. Something happens at the end of the season, kind of sparks things a little bit, and they go, all right, we'll give him a new deal. Anytime you are inclined to do that, they should have someone who comes up to them and says, no, we're not giving them the contract. Go ahead and fire them. Let's move on.
And to that point, if you as an AD or as a baseball general manager have any doubts about your manager or your coach, whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision, long term, you need to, any doubts whatsoever probably should tilt you to, we need to make a change.
Probably so. So that brings us to the fact that, there's a local coach here who not only from Arkansas, but was a quarterback at Arkansas. His career was derailed by injuries, but Rhett Lashlee has been mentioned as possibly Hunter Yurichek's top choice to become Arkansas's next coach. I think there's a great question here, and I think that Rhett obviously has some close ties to that job, and maybe in the best of situations would even consider it. I would have to think that right now he's got a better chance of making the playoffs coaching SMU in the ACC than he does coaching Arkansas in the SEC.
Probably. I mean, the ACC is, at least this year. I mean, you're talking about long term, but yeah, I would say he's probably got a better chance there at SMU. I don't know what the NIL situation is at Arkansas, but you are the one school in the state. I don't know how much money there is to be handed out, but that is
I think there might be more money at SMU. Frankly, I think there's a greater concentration of billionaires at SMU than there is at Arkansas. Jerry Jones could help them out. I don't know how much Jerry really does. I've never gotten the indication that he's. I'm sure he's a fairly major donor there, but I think that there probably more money coming from other places. The thing about being in the ACC,
I mean, that
is
Walton family could help them out a little bit.
well, they could, but I don't know if they're that big on the athletic program. The thing that about being in the ACC is that, okay, you got Clemson, Miami, Florida State, and that's really it. Those are the three schools you got to worry about in the ACC. And if they're going to take two from the ACC, and that's one of the playoff models that we've seen, especially if it goes to 16. Well, then your chances are pretty good, especially if Dabo Swinney is not long for Clemson. So, I don't know why he would leave to go there unless there was something had happened at SMU that he's not happy about. And I have not gotten that indication that there's anything the matter at SMU. Now, you do have a new AD there in Damon Evans. I don't know if he would have a feeling like I'd like to have my guy in here. The thing about that is that it's not the AD's guy anymore. The ADs are not making these major hires on the football and basketball coaches. Those decisions are being made by other people. So I have no indication that anybody is unhappy with Rhett. I have no indication that Rhett would really want to go back to Arkansas, but it's at least worth watching to see what happens there. We're going to see this week, Texas is going to finally return to competitive football here by playing Florida in the Swamp. So that will be interesting to see how that goes this week. We also it is kind of a bad week here. Well, we didn't even talk about the fact that you're, I guess you didn't want to talk about your Georgia.
All right, we're out of time. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Lost to Alabama. Come on.
Yeah,
What's up with that?
I'm going to tell you, there are things that you can't account for, and I do think that Alabama gets in Kirby Smart's head. Georgia had a chance to kick a field goal in the fourth quarter, tie that game. Everything was working in their direction. It wasn't like the 4th and 1 situation was at the 1 yard line. It was still, I don't know, they were at the 10 or the 12. They should have kicked the field goal. And I think that Kirby would tell you, if he was being honest in retrospect, he should have kicked the field goal. So Georgia suffered that loss. This team they have some growing to do. But I think it also just, once again, hammers home that the SEC is rather wide open this year.
Yeah, it is, just like it was last year for the most part. Texas played well. They lost to Georgia last year. Of course, that game is still out there. Texas is playing in Athens this fall. So yeah, it is wide open right now. I think that Texas A&M 16-10 winner over Auburn last week. I don't think Auburn's very good, but they're not bad. I think that's Auburn right now is a middle of the pack SEC team. That would make you a top 2 or 3 in most other leagues. And A&M's defense was terrific. The offense wasn't very good. Marcel Reed had a little trouble finding his big-time receivers in that game. But when you hold a team to 10 points, an SEC team at 10 points, that's really good. So the Aggies right now, I have them at the top of my SEC rankings, and until further notice, we'll see what they do later on. Mike Elko kind of had a Brian Kelly moment after the game. He was complaining because people weren't asking him questions about how well their defense played, which he had a little bit of a point in there, but he probably didn't need to go as I would say crazy, but he did kind of make a big deal about it. So. We'll be back next week. We'll have more of this scintillating conversation, and we'll have a little more clarity on a lot of things, we hope. We're desperate for clarity around here. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.